Bonkowski joins me, Marky, Billson, here on 1420 WEMB Sports Radio. And this is a very special time for Jerry because the NASCAR season goes to Chicagoland Speedway. He is a native of the city of the big shoulders. Are you from Chicago proper or like someplace like Joliet or outside of it?
Yeah, it's in Joliet. I live about 25 minutes from the racetrack, so it's definitely a home game for me, so to speak, this weekend, and looking forward to it. The weather right now, there may be some dicey weather tonight for the truck race, but Saturday and Sunday are looking pretty good.
Well, I wanted to ask, where are you? I mean, are you in Chicago City proper, or like I said, one of the suburbs?
I'm in one of the suburbs. I'm due east of the track.
Okay. No, I just was curious. I mean, obviously, they call it Chicagoland, obviously, because there are places like, Evanston and, like you said, Joliet and, all those sort of nice places as well. But, no, we're talking to Jerry. And before, though, I want to talk about the upcoming race. I wanted to ask you about Sonoma. I was a little surprised. When we talk about this, the pony cars, don't they excel or shouldn't they excel on the road courses just a little bit more? And maybe last year that was where the Camaro actually was able to shine. They didn't necessarily on the track. So are you kind of surprised? I was, that it was the Toyotas that were so dominant. I think they were 31 seconds ahead of the rest of the field in Sonoma on Sunday.
No, I wasn't really surprised because, number one, there was the track was lengthened actually by almost a half a mile when they added the carousel back. Remember the carousel, which is one of the bigger parts of that racetrack, had not been used by NASCAR in Cups or Xfinity racing for the last time they used it was 1997, so 22 years ago, and that was number one that changed the complexion of the race, so to speak, if you will. And number two, Toyota and Toyota drivers really seem to do very well at that track. Not just this past Sunday, but they've had a history over probably the last 6, 7, 8 years of doing very well there too. So it wasn't really a big surprise to me at all that Marky Jr. won. That it was that he had such a big win, a big lead, if you will, at the end, and then the other drivers that are Toyota drivers did fairly well as well too. So it was not really a big surprise to me at all.
Well, like I said, maybe not to you. It was to me because, like I said, but you mentioned the carousel, and that's a wild card.
You're a Chevy guy. That's why it's a surprise to you.
Well,
You're disappointed that Camaro didn't win.
Nah, right there. I should report it. I got to take the 73 Caprice into Garland Tire after the end of the show and get one of the tires fixed and all that sort of stuff. But anyhow, hey, I do want to go and talk a little bit about Chicagoland Speedway. You have written a story about the Grundy County Speedway, and I'm loving that name because it reminds me of Grundy, Virginia, which is, it's in our region. I mean, I'm not sure if Grundy actually falls in the Bluefield, Princeton market or the Tri-Cities market per se, but it's right there on the border. It's one of those places I'm sure that Channel 5 in Bristol sends cameras out to on high school football Friday nights and all that. So I love the name Grundy County Speedway, and you've written about their relationship that we want to get to. But I want to ask you, what I want to do is ask, why does Chicagoland Speedway get so much flack? I mean, it's not in the playoffs anymore. I've read it ranked, not so high. I mean, there was one of them, a ranking that I said came in dead last at 23rd and all this. Is this a bad rap? I mean, tell us about Chicagoland Speedway. Why is it good? Why is it bad?
Well, it's not the track itself. I mean, the track is a 1.5-mile track. It's very, it's very competitive. There's no question about it. The biggest problem and the biggest challenge that the folks from the Speedway have had, and I know all those folks very, very well, over the years, is Chicago, the market, while it welcomes in a lot of fans and reporters and teams, obviously, from around the country, the Chicago market, though, just doesn't seem to want to, or it has a problem supporting that race. There are a lot of race fans in Chicago. There's no question about that. But for whatever reason, they don't come out, and they changed the race schedule so that now the Chicagoland is in the end of June rather than the first race of the playoffs. does a complete change of the schedule, there may be some changes in terms of number of tracks maybe losing races, other tracks maybe gaining races. We might see a few new tracks on the schedule, maybe like a Road America or maybe a Circuit of the Americas, that kind of thing. I think Chicagoland, it should be in the playoffs. And I'm saying this from a personal standpoint, not
Sure.
so much as a reporter, but I'm from Chicagoland. I'd love to see them back in the playoffs. I think they bring a lot to that postseason. But for now, the thing is they've got this weekend's race in June, at the end of June, and then of course next week they'll be pretty much in the same type of schedule or same type of area in the schedule too. So, excuse me. I think that going forward, Chicagoland Speedway will be a big factor, but it's just kind of in a different situation here for this year, next year.
Well, you mentioned that maybe it hasn't been as well supported as it could be. I mean, that being said, I mean, you're a Chicago native. We can hear the accent, that sort of thing. And, it's the third largest market. I mean, there are going to be motorsports fans in Chicago. There are going to be fencing fans in Chicago. Maybe it is not the hotbed that, say, Talladega or Daytona or, dare I say, Bristol might be, but with the site, you're only going to have NASCAR fans and all this. So, I mean, I'm surprised if it isn't better supported, but you've written how that Grundy County track right there, 25 minutes away, I think you report, and now there's like a partnership with the Chicagoland Speedway as well as the Grundy County. They're not fighting for fans, they're working together. How is that taking place, Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com?
Well, as I mentioned in my story, I mean, you go back 6, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, there has not been a very strong relationship between NASCAR tracks and some of the grassroots tracks that have been in their area. And that's, there are a number of reasons why that was the case. But to Chicagoland Speedway's credit, they reached out to Grundy County because Grundy County is so close and said, hey, we would like to help you because we believe in building racing from the grassroots level. I mean, virtually every single NASCAR driver, be it Cup, Truck, or Xfinity, has come up through the grassroots ranks. It just makes a lot of sense to have a partnership here. And, later this year, Chicagoland Speedway is going to be the entitlement sponsor for a race in Grundy County. Some of the members of the Chicagoland Speedway's staff, they actually work at Grundy County, they help out, things like that. A lot of, they come out there to support the racing and the fans, too, as well. So it makes a lot of sense, and I think you're going to see that trend continue, not just between Grundy County and Chicagoland Speedway, but I think you're going to see other tracks around the country do something similar, too. I mean, here's another thing, too. I mentioned in the story that, we've lost a number of racetracks within the last 10 to 20 years around, within a mile, about a 50 to 100 mile radius of Chicagoland Speedway. We lost, Ileana Speedway. We lost Lake Geneva Speedway. We lost Santa Fe Speedway. We lost Raceway Park. I mean, that's 4 big tracks that were very well known on the grassroots level, and they're no longer around. They're either, a subdivision or they're, businesses were built upon them or whatever. So it makes sense that, we've seen a good buddy of mine, Scott Kosick from RacingIn.com, I quoted him in the story as well. He mentioned that, about 10 or so years ago, there were 1,600 racetracks, and that includes, grassroots tracks, big tracks, drag strips, anything that's a racing facility. And now, today, we're down to about 1,100 tracks. We've lost about 500 tracks in the last 10 years or so due to the economy, due to fans not coming out to some of those tracks and supporting them like they should. So it just makes a lot of sense to have a tie-in because one other example real quick I'll give you is that tomorrow, Saturday, before the Xfinity race, Chicagoland Speedway is going to introduce all some of the champions that have raced or that race regularly at Grundy County, and they're also going to have the drivers, and they'll be in the fan zone to meet some of the fans, talk about grassroots racing, and the Grundy County has a race tonight. It's going to be a real big race because it's their 4th annual bicycle giveaway to a lot of the young kids, a lot of the young fans that come out to the track too as well. So that's going to fans. I think you'll see some folks from that are coming here for the race for this weekend. They go out to Grundy County. In fact, NBC Sports sending a camera crew out there to do a little bit of a feature on tonight's bicycle giveaway. So, it just makes a lot of sense to tie in, the two different styles of racing. I'd love to see, for example, like Bristol Motor Speedway. I'd love to see them tie in with some of the short tracks around there. Maybe like a Bowman Gray. I know it's a little bit of a distance there, but that's the first track that comes to my mind. That they can tie in. And I think that you look at the tracks, maybe either New Hampshire or Fontana. You can go anywhere in the country. There are certainly short tracks that are nearby that I think would benefit the big tracks, and vice versa. The big tracks would be benefited by having relationships with the short tracks.
I'm thinking of right there in Sullivan County. That's the same. That's the county that both Bristol and Kingsport are in, but the Kingsport Speedway. And I found this to be very intriguing because I remember when the Kingsport Speedway closed, start of the century, and all this, and it was a bad time, I thought, for sports in the Tri-Cities. East Tennessee State had dropped football at the time. It just really wasn't looking all that good. And I'm wondering, though, because Bristol was, at that time, it was still, yes, we were putting in 150,000 people in a race. If maybe they were dwarfing Kingsport in that sense. We're the hottest ticket in NASCAR and all that. Well, then, yeah, you wanted to go to the event in Bristol, maybe the daily Friday night thing in Kingsport, seeing your friends race, not so much. How would you, now that Bristol, gotta say, it is struggling. I mean, I was there, this spring. I think there were 26,000 people there. That was my count. And how would you suggest Kingsport's open again? Say a BMS and a Kingsport have a coalition to increase racing awareness, in your opinion?
I think it'd be great because you think about this too. I mean, first of all, saying 26,000 fans at Bristol just blows my mind. I mean, I've been there. Totally to the gills, and to see that huge number of fans come out. I mean, that's sad to see that. But
I know that there were attendance counts that said that there were more, but I'm telling you, Jerry, I did 1, 2, 3, and no, I didn't go all the way up to 26, but I was doing there are people in 51 different sections. Now, if I estimate this, and it came up to 26 in my opinion, okay? Wow. I mean, and in fact, it actually came to 13, but I doubled it thinking, gotta be some people in the restroom, gotta be some people in luxury boxes, and all that. But yes, please continue. I'm sorry, but I mean,
and I understand what you're saying, and, that, to me, is illustrative of the fact that we need to do, or I shouldn't say we, but I mean, the industry needs to do a better job of reaching out to race fans and try to show them, what they're missing, because they're missing a good show. I mean, you go to a lot of these tracks, like a Bristol, like a Chicagoland Speedway, it's not just about racing. They have concerts here, either pre or post race. They have a lot of different activities going on. I know Chicagoland Speedway right now, there's a big Ferris wheel. They're kind of making like a circus event this weekend, and I mean that in a good way when they say circus event. I mean, there's a lot of different events for the fans to take part in. And the other thing too is, Marky, and I was going to, I forgot one very important similar relationship, if you will, that always draws a huge crowd is when you have the Bristol or the Brickyard 400 down at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Right down the road is Lucas Oil Speedway, Lucas Oil Raceway rather, which is about maybe 10 miles, maybe 15 miles tops from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And they used to have the trucks and the Xfinity cars racing there. They don't do that anymore. They're back. They race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but there's a lot of other short track style racing like ARCA and K&N series and other series that race at Lucas Oil, and that's such a close by to the speedway that on that weekend, Lucas Oil Raceway is very busy on Fridays and Saturdays because you got a lot of fans in town that want to see racing, and they're getting a good fill of racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but they also want to see short track racing, and that place is usually packed. I remember I was out there probably 4 years ago, I want to say, and I mean it was packed. The place was absolutely packed on the same race weekend that they had the Brickyard 400. So I'm sure that tracks like Bristol Motor Speedway, Charlotte Motor Speedway, tracks in your general area, they look at that and they see that there is a lot of good that can come about in having a relationship with the tracks that are nearby. I mean, and I think that you're going to see even more of that relationship continue to build because, it's not just about, one track getting the fans' dollar as opposed to the other tracks not getting the fans' dollar. I mean, everybody wants to obviously make money, but at the same time, they want to build the sport. And like I quoted one of the drivers in my story, you have to have cars before you have fans, because if you don't have the cars, you're not going to have the fans. You have to have big car counts. You have to have, and a lot of these, especially in the grassroots tracks, a lot of these fans in the stands are somehow affiliated with some of the racers and the cars that are in those races. They're either family members or friends or whatever. So, it just makes sense to me. And, when I first started talking about doing this story back, I think we started talking about it back in January, I think it was. I started doing some research and things like that, and it kind of blew me away. And I've been in this sport for, as you know, a long, long time. It kind of blew me away that, there hasn't been that kind of relationship between tracks. But now that there is, it just makes so much sense. I mean, it's like one of those no-brainers that, gosh, we should have been this 10, 15, 20 years ago instead of, NASCAR going in one direction and the short tracks going in the other direction, and never the twain shall meet, so to speak. But they are doing that now, and I think that we're going to continue to see that going forward with other racetracks and other markets too.
Well, this is what I like about the local tracks when I've been done is, I've talked to you and I've lamented how the lack of distinct styling in the Cup Series among stock cars. I mean, I'm excited because now I can tell that's a Mustang if I see the rear lights, because they do put those strips of the three taillights, it's not actual taillights, but they do put it on the back of the race car. And I just think it looks great, and it's a nod back to the distinctive styling. I thought that the car of tomorrow really hurt NASCAR because it took that away. You get that distinct styling at the local track. I mean, you've got people racing, 95 Impalas out there on the Charger Series, or, just a car that you can look at and say, I know that car, I remember it. A Monte Carlo from back in the day, the one that Earnhardt drove to his death or something like that. You will recognize those cars. That's an appeal that the local track has that the major track, I think, has gone away from it, except with the possible exception, like I said, of the Mustang. Hey, I do want to ask, though, this, now we're going to Chicagoland, and I asked a little bit about, what makes the track good, what makes the track bad. But it's a 1.5 mile track. I guess the one thing that I hear about is it's not that all distinct. There are a lot of 1.5 mile tracks. You're a Chicagoan. What makes that speedway to you unique? Because I don't care if you're talking a cookie cutter ballpark. There's something unique about every venue. What's unique about Chicagoland?
Well, I think just the venue. I mean, the fact that where it's at.
Okay.
Chicago. When you think of the Chicago market, let's take the Chicagoland Speedway and Route 66 Raceway, which is right next door to it, out of the equation. Where do you go for big racing in this area? The next biggest track is Indianapolis. Or you've got if you're an IndyCar fan, or you've got the Detroit Grand Prix, or if you're a NASCAR fan, you've got Michigan Speedway, but that's 5-6 hours away driving. So it's the fact that we have these two big racing facilities in the Chicagoland area. That's big. I mean, when I remember, I was actually part of the original reporting crew while I was working for a small newspaper at the time. It was kind of a short temporary fill-in role I had. But I was there when all this discussion in the Joliet area came up about, what was Chicagoland Speedway and Route 66 Raceway, what were they going to bring to the market? And there was a lot of excitement that, where the tracks are located at. I mean, there was nothing out there. It was on the south part of Joliet. You're basically touching farmland. And the irony of this all, Marky, is that if you look at where the speedways are today, the hoped for hotels, restaurants, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
down the area. I mean, if you look outside from the Speedway, you're going to see, massive buildings right next door, right across the street, and, right down the street. So, and one other thing I forgot to mention, too, you also have the, what do they call it, oh, God, I can't remember, the Autobahn Speedway, which is a road course for people that want to take their own cars out. It's only like 2 miles from Chicagoland Speedway as well, too. It's more like a private kind of track kind of thing. But, it certainly shows that there is all those tracks combined, plus Grundy County, plus you got Rockford Speedway, you got Swinger Speedway, and Wisconsin. You've got a lot of racetracks still in and around within about 100 to 150 mile radius that show that this is really a hotbed of racing.
Well, you mentioned the industry around the track. Bristol Motor Speedway, I mean, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump away from Exide Drive where they make the batteries. So, I mean, it's down here as well and all that. Now that I think about it, I mean, the convenience store that used to be across the street, it was a Mexican restaurant. And, well, anyway. I want to ask you, though, right now at Chicagoland this weekend, Kyle Busch, he's a 3-1 favorite. That's the odds that I saw, followed by Martin Truex Jr., 6-1. Kevin Harvick follows at 9-2, even though he hasn't won in Chicago in quite some time. Started the century, I believe, and then Martin Truex Jr. at 6-1. Kyle Busch won it last year. Who do you like?
I don't have a pick for this weekend. I mean, I have not come up with anybody that stands out. I mean, certainly, like you mentioned, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Kevin Harvick, those are among the three favorites you probably could point to say that, they got the best chance to win. But, I like a guy like a Kyle Larson. I like a guy like a Kurt Busch. I think that, even though they're teammates, I think that, one of them could certainly win. Jimmy Johnson, I've been riding that horse all season. I think he can win. There's just a lot of different drivers that can win this race. I mean, Austin Dillon, Ty Dillon, Michael McDowell, I always go that far to say him. I mean, there was just so many guys here. This is a very unique track in the sense that, it's very, among the racetracks out there, it's probably one of the most difficult tracks out there, particularly when it comes to hot weather. I mean, they're talking temperatures in the 90s on Sunday for race day, and even though the race will start a little bit later in the afternoon, it'll start at 3 o'clock Eastern. Excuse me. It's going to be a race that's going to be significantly changing as it goes on, because it may start out maybe 90, 92 degrees at race time, and by the time the race finishes 2.5, 3 hours later, it could be down to the low 80s. So that'll change the complexity of the track, that'll change the conditions of the track, it'll change the racing of the track. So, Chicagoland Speedway to me is a very unique track in that it changes so much and can change so much, kind of like Bristol can do that as well, too. I mean, when you start a race, let's say, later in the afternoon or, early evening, and then you progress into the later part of the evening, it changes, dramatically. So I think we're going to see that this weekend.
Wow. Well, if you won't pick someone, I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. He's not only the favorite, but he had a good run last week in Sonoma. And let's say he's very, very hot, and he won last year. So, I mean, the odds I would say, I'll go Kyle Busch. I'm going to make the pick this time. So, yeah, go ahead. Kyle Busch, 3-1. That's what the odds are that I've shown right there. The odds are always in favor of Jerry Bonkowski because he always writes compelling stuff. Just like I said, that Grundy County, Chicagoland merger, if you will, or partnership. Partnership is what I should say. Go read that on NBCSports.com and keep listening to Tri-City Sports Now. Bottom of the hour, we'll talk Braves with Josh Brown, coming back after this.
All American Savings.